Thank you for coming to select books, Vani. Thank you. Vani, thank you.
Vani, thank you, Vani.
Oh, really? Yeah, the time to negotiate sitting on the tabletop here.
Okay, tonight is we're really trying to it started off as a kind of a request for Isa to talk about it. We share a lot of common interests in sometimes literature, sometimes historical events. I'll just read this what is said to me. Isa graduated, he's my senior, he graduated from the National University of Singapore, as well as has an MPhil in Malay Letters from the University of Kebangsaan, Malaysia, and is currently working as a Deputy Director in the Commuter Infrastructure Development with LTA. He's written 8 novels in Malay: Satu Bumi, Kiswa, Tawasul Menara, Atas Nama Cinta, Menuluk Kehana, pardon me, my Malay is not Rawa, and Duku Tuan Lekasa. 7 of them were translated into English: One Earth, Intercession, Nadra, A Song of the Wind, Rawa, 1819, and The Tower, which will be launched very soon. His work, Satu Bumi, was also translated into Chinese, if you are interested, and I really highly recommend it. He's also published 2 collections of poems, Sumo Usia and Munajat Sukma, a collection of short stories, Stetsa Mindu, and a collection of theatre scripts called Pintu. Isa also writes song lyrics and scripts for television, drama serials, and documentaries. He was awarded the Southeast Asian Right Award in 2006, the Cultural Medallion Highest Arts Award in Singapore in 2007, and the Anugerah Tun Sri Lanang, the highest Malay Literary Award in Singapore in 2009. So, without further ado, can you please join me in welcoming Isa Kamari?
First and foremost, thank you for being here. Nothing to listen to my chit chat about my experiences living in a kampong situated somewhere on Bukit Brown. I say it began informally, right? Again, we were just chit chatting, just asking me whether I would like to share some of the experiences with a larger audience, rather than on Facebook once in a while kind of status updates. So I say, okay, no problem. In any case, I've written a book, A Song of the Wind, which actually tells a bit of my experiences living there. So you can use it as a reference. So my talk today will be either based on my memories from living there, and also maybe I'll be reading some of the relevant sections of A Song of the Wind to get you to feel the mood, environment there. How do I begin? Okay. Kampong Tawakal, in which I used to live at, is actually a village comprising of about 12 households, Malay households. And the house form is like an army barrack, where there's 6 homes at the front and 6 at the back to back kind of situation, and only divided by timber walls. It's elevated slightly because it's actually perching on the slope, and the kitchen for the entire 12 households actually is separated by a lane, a covered lane, and there's also a common bathroom with a space for washing for the women, and an outhouse situated about 100 meters away. A lot of chicken cooks around, and next to it is another group of houses owned by someone else, which I will describe later in my book. So maybe I just start with reading to you how I first got there, and then we can start discussing maybe a little more.
You can have a kind of
chit chat
with the
rather than one day straight. So allow me to read to you first chapter of the book, Song of the Wind, Moving House. I recall the day our family moved to Kampong Tawakal in 1967. Before that, we had lived in a room with my aunts in Kampong Tawakal, an adjacent village, but we had become a family of 6, father, mother, 2 younger sisters, and a brother, and needed more room. At 7, I was the oldest child. Father worked as a typewriter technician at the British camp on Alexandra Road, and mother was a housewife. The wooden house father had rented was one of a row that looked like an army barrack, with the Brown Hill Cemetery, Bukit Brown Cemetery, surrounding the block on 3 sides. The houses were built at the foot of a hill with 6 houses facing the front, that is downhill, and 6 looking backwards. Each house had 2 rooms, with only timber plank walls and wire mesh at the upper reaches to provide cross ventilations and to separate the individual units. Besides that, family secrets too wafted unhindered from house to house. The roofs of the houses was primarily of asbestos, with cracks sections overlaid or replaced with zinc sheets to prevent leaks. The ceiling too was asbestos, nailed onto horizontal patterns. The individual kitchens stood separate from the main houses. There was only one shared bathhouse for the entire block, with a laundry and wash area next to it. One communal bucket latrine stood about 75 feet away from the road, next to some chicken coops. Most other dwellings in the villages were of similar design and had same facilities, but were owned by different Chinese Tauke landlords. Opposite our row was a cluster of houses owned by a Peranakan woman married to a Punjabi man. The houses were built closer together and were so haphazard that they looked like a part of a squatter colony, with patch-up walls of plywood and zinc, the roofs covered with odd-shaped pieces of linoleum and sheets of rusty metal. Several tall kabu-kabus and a lone rambai tree, always heavy with fruit, stood around these houses. And although the trees enhanced the atmosphere somewhat, there was no mistaking that Bibi Peranakan's houses were quite run down. All my neighbors in the kampong were Malay, with the exception of one Indian family. When the lorry arrived carrying our belongings, several villagers, particularly young men, came to help unload and move our furniture into our house. I learned that this was a village tradition. Gotong royong was a Kampong Tawakal culture. Our arrival appeared to be an excuse for a small festival, especially for the kampong children. Our landlord, who came with his son to welcome us, smiled and approached father and gave him a bag of rice. For luck, his son said. The Tauke only nodded and said something in Chinese to his son. I guess that he didn't speak Malay. My father said that you have a good family, his son translated in Pidgin Malay. Thank you, father replied with a white grin, still surprised at the gift. I understood his surprise. 2 years ago, we had been forced to remain indoors and hide for several days because of police riots. I was too young to understand why I was not allowed to play outside the house with my siblings at the time. Father had ventured out to buy food provisions from the village shop. Only on the 3rd day. On his return, he told mother about how Pak Abu, who lived at the end of the village, had died from slash wounds after being attacked by a group of Chinese youth who came into the village on a lorry 2 days earlier. They had buried the corpse only that morning because villagers hadn't dared go out before that for fear of being attacked. Father told us to continue staying indoors until the situation became normal. Although I didn't understand what was happening, I was aware of father's intense vigilance and could sense my mother's terror. The situation at Kampong Tawakal, however, was different. I saw only white grins on the faces of my parents, and my siblings were in high spirits too. That is the atmosphere when I came to Kampong Tawakal. I was 7 years old then, going to start primary 1 a few weeks later. My whole life as a teenager actually was spent in Kampong Tawakal. From thoughts to teens, basically, I was spent in Kampong Tawakal. It is, I mean, my father only worked as a typewriter mechanic. We had no television at that moment, just a transistor radio, you know, and furniture was like for my top kind of furniture. But somehow the kampong atmosphere provided a somewhat healthy environment for me to grow up. The reason being that I had a lot of good friends from both the Indian family and also later even the shop owners' sons. You know, we were like, you know, playing around together as one unit. Although the individual kampong houses, I mean the group of houses were delineated in terms of racial lines, there wasn't any trouble at all at the moment. Everybody respected each other's boundaries. But there was also some instances whereby things happened, like Malay children, youth like myself, go and steal chickens from the Chinese village, kind of thing. But those are the normal things that happen every time. Maybe what I want to say is that Bukit Brown was actually my playground all the time. We played things like, you know, I mean, hide and seek, or even in what you build houses, or even when going hunting for wild birds, even fruits and berries, you know, that kind of thing, where children always have fun with. So we roam the entire Bukit Brown area, trying to trap birds, you know, hunt for food, dig out wild tapioca from the farms nearby, things like that. What else can I say? I mean, apart from reading from the books.
Well, did you go to school around there? Or?
I was initially I went to Swiss Cottage Primary School, which is situated about 2 kilometers away. Initially, I walked there, but soon after, my mother had the opportunity to actually ask an uncle who had a car to actually pick me up, and we sort of paid him the monthly fees, so to speak. But when the car breaks down and the uncle did not come, we had to walk, you know, and it was about 2 kilometers of walk, you know, going from along Whitley Road to Malcolm Road, and then going straight to Whitley Primary School, where now I think what school is that now? Singapore Chinese, isn't it?
Yeah, Singapore Chinese Girls.
Singapore Chinese is, and then Swiss Cottage is still there, but I think now it's international school. So it was a walk there, and there was some shop houses across the river where I always had my hair cut. Father would actually take me on a pillion bike ride, and then goes there and I had haircut, always at the shop. But maybe I'll go on reading, because my family didn't have a camera then, so I did not record any photos. But the only way for me to record it now is through my book. So yeah.
But we've already witnessed how vivid, you know, those memories are, even with the very first.
Yeah, I'll give you more vivid and interesting read, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I want to tell you about an interesting lady in Kampong Tawakal. I met her on my second day at Kampong Tawakal. So I'll introduce you to Kak Leha. Okay. It was a new beginning for our family, and I did not sleep well on the first night. Firstly, there was a heavy downpour with frightening rolls of thunder and flashes of lightning. It was as if the sky had opened up to welcome us to Kampong Tawakal. Next, I came under a relentless attack from some bed bugs, and awoke to find bite marks all over my arms, legs, and torso in the morning. Then there were the constant gecko mating calls and sounds of mice squeaking. After the rain stopped, a cacophony of croaking frogs began and continued till dawn. Father fumigated the rooms the next day in an attempt to rid the house of the bugs that live in the cracks of the walls and in our beds. We managed to kill quite a handful that day, all looking bloated with what I was certain was our blood. Father had set a mouse trap before going to bed, using a piece of roasted coconut kernel as bait, and in the morning we found a large rat trap in it. Father killed the rodent and buried the carcass. That morning I joined the queue outside the public bathhouse for the first time with village grandpas, uncles, and young men, all in sarongs, towels hanging loose over their shoulders, smoking or holding toothbrushes between their teeth, scratching mosquito bites, and with deep sleepy heads still dreaming. I saw several sleepy-looking children in the queue as well, including seven who came to squat next to me. I only saw one woman in the queue. She was wearing a nightgown, standing next to the door, holding a towel to her chest. Everyone was looking at her, but she seemed oblivious to their stares. Her lemon yellow nightgown was translucent, and in the dim light of the cobweb-covered hall, the floral print, I even could not read it properly, the floral print panties and the outline of her body was clear. It didn't look like she was wearing a bra either. That was the first time I had seen a woman's body in such clarity, albeit under the veil of a dress. My hair stood on end, my heart pounded, and a weird sensation traveled from my chest to just below my belly. When she entered the bathhouse, I heard several men sigh and saw some swallowing their saliva as they waited with bated breath for her to reappear. When at last she came out from the bathhouse with a lush towel around her body, I heard another much louder collective sigh. I smiled. I was incredulous. It was all so amusing, yet sad. Seven explained that the young woman was Kak Leha, and that she was the spouse of Abang Ahmad, my next-door neighbor. I smiled, pleased with the explanation. Then it was Seven's turn. He glanced at me sideways and asked if I'd like to bathe with him. I felt awkward at first, but accepted his offer, seeing my turn in the queue was still a long way off. Besides, there was nothing to be ashamed of. The village women only started using the bathhouse around 10 in the morning after the men left. Most came in kembangs, that is sarongs tied over their breasts, with towels around their heads and basins of dirty laundry. While waiting for their turn, they chatted and did their laundry, squatting in the cemented wash area. Some women went into the bathhouse and bathed together with their young children. It all seemed so natural and wonderful. So that was Kak Leha. She was my immediate neighbor. And she was, the couple just got married. So it was quite interesting. You know, at night you hear sighs, groans, and whatever. Because it was just a timber wall separating the house, and there was, and the top part of the wall was just mesh wire. So everything could be heard. So it's like, natural, of course it was interesting in the first, after a while it became normal. Like, like anything else. Kak Leha was an important part of my life, in the sense that actually she was the one who brought up this manhood out of me at that period, where I grew up from adolescent to being a young man at that moment. So, and she was like, the attraction of the kampong, but somehow it's like, like the lady of the kampong, so to speak. She was a kind woman. We met recently, actually. She's no longer staying in Singapore, but in Johor. And I already had children. Whenever I see her face, I kind of, somehow thank her, for that wonderful experience. I have more of her. I will read to you later on. I really don't know how to proceed because there's so much to tell. Maybe I will tell you a little bit of my experiences during maybe the Chinese burial and also during Chengbei, what would we do as a group of friends? You know, when there's a Chinese burial going on, you know, suddenly Kampong Tawakal and its fringes, you know, became very alive. Although it is something related to death, in the sense that suddenly you see hawkers selling chin chow, you know, tauhe, you know, or pancakes, you know, suddenly appear along the street, Whitley Road then, which is now PIE. It was called Whitley Road then. So at the side of the street, when this whole entourage of the burial entourage was there, and you know, last time I mean I myself witnessed the huge coffin, you know, those that was kind of carved out from tree trunks, you know, and take several men to carry using ropes and kind of a plank, a kind of pole, yeah. And then before that, when they dig deep into the hole, they dig deep. They pour in charcoal and also lime. I guess it was supposed to enhance the age of the wood or something, or protect it while inside the ground. And it became so lively, so much so that actually children from the village would come and gather, almost like a festival, although it is related to death, you know, kind of thing. And sometimes the family would bring along, you know, biscuits and you know, peanuts, and even distribute to the children who are watching the show. So the show, it is kind of, you know, of course, the usual ceremony that came about. When PIE was being constructed, they had to actually exhume some of their graves. And from the road to my village, there's a path which is about 100 meters long or so. And when, during this exhumation process, what happened was that the coffins were lined up along the footpath, while waiting it to be, you know, brought somewhere, we don't know where. But also,
so these have been dug
up from the ground, yeah. And also there's a huge tampayan, those jars that there's also put next to it. I think those are actually containing the either the bones or whatever of each of the graves. You know, and I was very young then. You know, only went to primary school, and when that happened, when I had to come back from school, and it was already dark, what I did was that, okay, that's my home 100 meters away. Boom! Because it was so scary. I mean, the whole, I mean, rows of coffin and these earthen jars were placed along the roadside, and you know, and very eerie kind of situation. But the funny thing is that because you know the path so well, you know when to jump, when to skip, you know, the kind of thing as you run, and yeah, because
press forward button,
whatever, yeah, and it was like, you know, and I have a story in the book about my experience of, you know, seeing ghosts. You know, and maybe I should read it.
So it appears that quite a large part of the book is
one third of it, roughly.
One third of it is about reminiscing about those days.
Yes.
So those hawkers were also for Chengbei, or?
Oh yeah, maybe before the story of the ghost,
because is there a difference between the normal, regular burial where you have chin chow or or the stalls?
Yeah.
Or is it then different during Chengbing?
It's about the same. It's about the
not the
same.
same.
But you just wonder.
Will you have more stalls? Or?
Yes, there will be more stalls during Chengbing, definitely. But you just wonder where do these hawkers come from? Where do they get the news of this burial ceremony going on? So I suppose these hawkers are from the villages nearby. Word spread around quickly and they come. But during Chengbing, we village kids actually are always armed with several things.
But when you say village kids, do you mean only the Malay kids or the...
Generally my friends are Malays, right? And we're one Indian guy and one Chinese, the son of a
local Chinese.
Yeah. But somehow he did not participated in whatever adventure that we had during Chengbing. So what I want to relate to you actually are some of the interesting things that happened during Chengbing. We Malay kids at that moment would be equipped with a sickle, a sabit, also a plastic bag full of tiny pebbles or tiny rocks, and 2 cans of paint, one in yellow paint, one gold paint, one red paint, and a brush, Chinese brush. So we take sort of fees for cutting grass or on the grave itself, and the stones that we collected were meant to actually be placed on top of the colored papers that's placed on the grave so that it would not fly away. And then the paint is actually to paint onto the engraving, and some of these our so-called patrons, they were so impatient. Let me take the paint. We do not know the Chinese character. We might make mistakes and so on. But it was interesting, red paint and gold paint. And there's a lot of types of graves, so to speak. The one that is particularly next to the row of houses that we were staying with is quite special. One of the village, my neighbor actually, is like a caretaker of that special grave. The grave actually were laid with glass mosaic, small pieces of glass mosaic, and it had a pond in its forecourt. And in the pond there would be there were lotus flowers, and a lot of fishes, even tortoises, and it was well maintained by the neighbor.
This was maintained year round?
Year round.
Only on special occasions? The tauke
or the owner of the grave or the family of the grave would come once in a while just to ensure that everything's okay, and he will pay the neighbor for his services. But during Chengbing, it was like a celebration also. The whole family would come for the ceremony. They would actually throw coins to the village kids, and we had to scramble for it, kind of thing. It was interesting. Also distributed peanuts, kwachis to the kids. So it was quite an enjoyable moment at the moment. So that was Chengbing. It was like, I don't know, it's something that we kids actually look forward to somehow, because we get, each of one of us, I mean, for the entire maybe Chengbing period, we can get as much as $10 for all our services. So $10 at that time was quite big for kids. So it was we would always look forward towards it. Yeah.
There were some folks actually also visit during Lunar New Year. Do you have any recollections of these? Apart from their death anniversaries, that's one of the dates.
Yeah, I sort of did not identify specifically what kind of thing, but whenever they come, we enjoy it. So that was the only connection there, between us kids and people who came by. So we did not really relate to what kind of environment it was. I think what kind of occasion it was. I suppose Lunar New Year probably was also celebrated there. Okay. So maybe back to the story of the ghost. You can listen to that. Let me just collect the
while the book is available here, just to plug for the book.
Okay, we are start with this. Yeah. Mother set the table and we sat for dinner. Even though mother had fried mackerel, my favorite fish, I ate little. I had no appetite. Father shook his head. Don't waste food, he admonished me. I finished my food without protest and then got up to go. But before I could open the door, father demanded, "Where are you going?" To wash my hands and I need to use the toilet, I said, calmly, hiding my fear. Mother smiled amused. I ran to the bathhouse, washed my hands and released myself. Looking around to make sure that nobody had seen me, I hurried to our rendezvous with a sure foot born out of familiarity. Darkness was not a problem. Crickets chirped, breaking the silence of the night. The tall kapok tree that stood grandly at a distance looked creepy, and the hair on my neck bristled. I had heard that a Pontianak, the ghost of a woman who had died during childbirth, could often be seen perched on that tree at night. It was 8 o'clock. Braving myself for the unknown, I looked up, but there was nothing, not even the moon. A cool breeze blew as I walked more briskly. I heard the strumming of a guitar in the wind. I was relieved. My friend was playing Di Malam Sepi, a hit song by the Favorites, an Indonesian band. It sounded right for the occasion. I joined in the still of the night, sleep dreaming and sad dreams. If you leave me, I'll cry. Nazira appeared in my mind. Nazira appeared in my mind again. Nazira is a schoolgirl which I became interested in. I would cry if Nazira ended our relationship and left. Hearing my approach, Sevan and Zul turned to look. Zul was sitting on a large rock next to a Chinese grave, with me over, and we continued singing our favorite song. Zul strummed louder. Sevan's veins bulged as he sang. "That's the best song I've ever heard," Sevan said. "Of course, it's by the Favorites," I added. Sevan handed me a bag of peanuts. I took some and passed the bag on to Zul, who took it and put down his bottle of Pepsi, half full, on the concrete ledge. Sevan took a sip from it. "I prefer Deloitte's," Zul protested. "Which song?" I asked, munching the crunchy peanuts and scattering the shells all over the grave. "The Rose," Zul tried. Zul said, "Yes, that's the good one. Let's sing it now," Sevan said, giving me the bottle of Pepsi. I gulped it down, turned the bottle over, saying, "Sorry, all gone." "No problem. I have some more." Sevan pointed to the corner of the tombstone. There were 4 more bottles of Pepsi there. "Where did you get the money for them?" Zul asked. "Bang Mat paid me for helping him to repair his motorcycle. I did it so that Kak Leha could get a ride to work," Sevan said. "That means also we get to see her thighs," Zul teased him. "I get to see that often enough," Sevan said. "You peep at her while she's taking a bath?" I said, shocked. Sevan nodded, looking pleased. Zul and I shook our heads. "Oh, come on, let's sing." Sevan changed the subject. "Tonight I want to be happy." "It's your turn to strum." Zul handed me the guitar. "Okay." Turning the instrument, I said, "Do I look like Rory Marantika?" "More like S.G. Beng," Sevan laughed, shutting his eyes like a blind singer, and we roared. Strumming with my eyes closed, I immersed myself in my songs with Sevan and Zul tapping their feet. We belted our Bunga Mawar in our breaking voices, entertaining the ghosts in the graves and scaring the insects and other night creatures. I looked up and saw no moon, nor was there a single star. Only the trees swayed in the breeze. Maybe it will rain tonight, I thought, continuing Rory Marantika's Angin Malam with Sevan and Zul singing chorus. If it hadn't been for the headlights from the road nearby, we'd have been in total darkness. But we were not afraid. We sang with enough enthusiasm to ensure that several graves at the far end had been exhumed to make way for the widening of the public road. We were familiar with the sight, and we had walked past them on our way to the village. Skeletal remains and strands of hair had been handed over to the next of kin to be reburied in a new cemetery, or cremated after valuables were kept aside in clay urns. Many coffins, particularly those made of good quality teak, were still intact, untouched by termites, and were lined up on one side of the cemetery. As the breeze grew stronger, our voices became louder as we belted out hit songs one after another. I surveyed the cemetery. From a distance, I saw two rays of light among the trees. A passing car, I thought. I followed the beams to determine the model of the car. The lights then made a left turn and headed towards the village. My eyes followed them. I was shocked by what followed. My back stiffened and I shivered. From behind the lights, a figure in white appeared and floated in the breeze. I had goosebumps and my heart pounded. I touched Sevan's arm with trembling hands and pointed to the figure. He trembled too. Curious at our strange behavior, Zul turned to look in the direction I was pointing. Our faces turned pale. Ghost! I screamed, throwing down the guitar. Ghost! Zul screamed too, getting up abruptly. When I looked to my side, I saw Sevan had already taken off and was running down the path. I panicked as did Zul. We were stunned for a moment, unable to move at the approaching figure. Ghost! We screamed in unison. Run! We ran in the direction Sevan had gone, stumbling. I kept running, not daring to look back. Sevan was the first to reach the village, clutching his stomach from the strain of running. When we reached Kampong Tawakal, we too bent over to catch our breath. Alerted by the commotion, a group of village boys came running towards us. What happened? Sunny inquired. Why are you so pale? Subra said. Zul and I stared at each other. Sevan remained bent over for a while more. All right, relax, Sunny said. We then sat on a large stone under the jackfruit tree, surrounded by the village boys. There was not a sound except for our labored breath. Ghost! We saw a ghost, Sevan said. Ghost? Where? Subrat was excited. Next to the coffins, near the road, Zul explained. You are kidding, right? Sunny was unconvinced. We are not lying, I swear, I said. It's the truth, Sunny. We all saw the white figure flying about, Sevan stressed. The village boys stared at him, eyes wide. We should go home and investigate. We should go and investigate, Subra suggested eagerly. Are you mad? Don't go. Ghosts can possess you, Sevan said. You guys are so lucky. It's not easy to see a ghost, Sunny found out. Come, your foot is bleeding. Zul pointed to my leg. I looked. There was a cut on my foot just below the ankle. I had probably grazed the edge of a tombstone. It began to hurt now that I had seen it. It's a small price paid. I'm glad we've escaped, I philosophized. Where's my guitar? Zul asked. Sorry, Zul, I left it out there. It was too difficult to run with the guitar. I apologize. We'll get it tomorrow, Sevan said. Okay, I'm going to go home now and go to bed, Zul said. Me too, I said. We'll continue the story tomorrow, Sevan said. The three of us know that the others walked to their houses disappointed. I stood at my doorstep, my heart pounding with fear and anticipation, fearful of the ghost we had just seen, and in anticipation of Father's wrath. I had disobeyed him. With clenched teeth and heavy feet, I tiptoed to the door, my heart in my throat. When I opened the door, I saw to my surprise my entire family, except for Father, in the living room looking at me. I swear they all looked as though they were trying hard to suppress laughter. What's happening? Then, when they burst out laughing, I was even more confused. What's wrong, Ham? You look pale, Mother said. Did you see a ghost? My sister added. Then they started laughing hysterically and I stood baffled. After that, a figure in white floated out of the bedroom. My face turned pale and I shivered. The ghost had followed me home. My knees buckled and I fell to the floor. With mouth open, I waited my fate. The sounds of laughter rose several notches. The white cloth dropped to the floor and standing there was Father. Do you still want to loaf about at night? Father roared. We will get to see more ghosts, Mother added. Father disguised himself in Mother's prayer robes. I was dumbfounded. So the ghost was my father, actually.
This is a true story?
True story. Because at that moment, I was supposed to be facing my exams, and it was the exam period. I was like, with my friends, playing guitar, and grades and so on. So he scared me off. That was the ghost. I never did see any ghosts there actually during my but you heard stories.
Are there discussions of the different types of ghosts?
Yeah, Pontiana is one, but there was one time when my neighbor was actually sort of possessed, and I do not know by what kind of ghost, but she used to work somewhere around Orchard Road, and she came back one day. She started to speak out in Chinese. In Chinese, I didn't understand them, so they call in the Pawang, the Bomo to they say actually according to that Ghostbuster. The ghost that followed her possessor was actually a Lang Sui, Chinese ghost or something like that. I don't know. But another instance also, there was another possessed situation, so to speak, where one of my neighbors again actually was crawling like a crocodile, and was like turning about, and then I do not know. I mean, those are the experiences I think the side that I saw pertaining to people getting possessed. But seeing a ghost is myself, I saw a ghost. He was father, but at that moment he was really a ghost. But never like really experienced it.
How did you describe this to Zul and Sivan?
They were like, they were like, after the acting, like, actually I wasn't scared, but they were scared too. Like, when we went back to
they found the guitar.
Yeah, actually, we broke the guitar. I mean, because, show it off. I had to, it was Seban's guitar, so I had to save money to buy it. But those are the sort of exciting moments that we had during. Actually, when I talk about Seban, I kind of feel sad at the moment because Seban committed suicide. His family had some problems, and he joined the army, and actually he jumped out of the plane without a parachute. So that he must be really feeling deeply hurt or something. That was the bravest of the Lord. Zul went back to Malaysia, lived in July, got married.
You said went back. Did the village comprise of folks from different areas?
Yes, I think so. I mean, not all are sort of local in a sense. I mean, they have close relatives in Malaysia. Back then, going back to Malaysia is like going back to another village, this kind of thing. So I'm not too sure about their citizenship status because I was young then. But they move about in that sense. And so although politics play, I mean, there's some political descriptions in the book, but we as children we did not really understand what it was all about then. But that thing that I remember very well that affected the village folks actually was during the oil crisis. During the oil crisis, the inflation that rose out of the oil crisis, a lot of people were retrenched, and a lot of Malay youth did not know what to do. They got no job, so they wandered about, doing nothing. It's very difficult for them to find jobs. Most of the youth were working, for example, as cleaners in the hotel and so on. During the school holidays, I used to work as a cleaner at Hilton Hotel, just to earn some money to buy a pair of pants, Last time we were, the trend then was to wear bell-bottom pants, where you can hide a few chickens inside. And then there was this chicken dance, where everybody was trying to dance. I cannot dance. I'm flat-footed. So, but then those are the things. And the shirt actually is like tight-fitted with floral kind of thing. John Travolta, so that was the time. What else should I tell you?
What were the interactions with the Chinese community?
It was like,
there were apparently some coffee shops.
Yes,
provision shop.
Yeah, the Tauke actually got a provision shop, and all the village folks would actually patronize the provision shop. And sometimes also we find hawkers coming in to the village itself. There's this Chinese lady who always come to sell fish, and my late mother's name was Sabaria, but she probably cannot pronounce it. She always calls it Saya. Instead of Sabaria, and she always sells fish.
Chinese lady.
I mean, there's also this Chinese old man who carry the bucket latrine and collect the night soil and then bring it out. I described a situation, whereby one
must be a long way to take out.
Yes. And actually, we followed him once all the way to see where he disposed it. Because sometimes, I mean, the lorry would come sometimes to collect it, but at one moment we followed him all the way to somewhere deep in the jungle where actually he kind of, just throw it there, because he was in the jungle and was not there. So, but a lot of undergrowth was there, so organically, sort of, get sterilized somehow, it's not of danger to anybody. I got one interesting episode about this night soil carrier. I do not know whether I sort of, marked it, but let's see whether I got it.
So these episodes are interspersed in this book?
It is 1/3 of the book, the first few things.
So really it's a kind of
Yes.
encapsulating certain episodes of history within the novel.
That's right.
You say?
Yes, that's right. And how actually some so-called happenings around the world, like when Apollo 10 landed on the moon, the village children will start creating their own rockets, and then shooting it to the air.
This was all heard from the news.
Yeah, there was only one television in the whole village, and it was Abang Ahmad's home, and we came to watch television also to watch Kaleha. so yeah, dual purpose. Yeah, I did not mark it, so I might have some time to find it. But I want to tell you a bit of Kaleha because I said she's sort of, what happened between me and Kaleha. Would you like to listen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let me just choose the
So everyone should have a Kaleha in their life.
I suppose so.
She's
She's pretty sexy, I suppose. Very sexy. Okay. I was returning home from school. I went to RI, so I had to take bus number 151 from Scotts Road all the way to Whitley Road. And it was a bus stop. I was walking. So this episode is about me and Kaleha and the bus ride. I came home late that day, had scout practice, and was learning how to pitch a tent. Since I was used to building tents in the village, the task was rather easy. I was still in my scout uniform when I walked towards the bus stop along River Valley Road and squeezed aboard bus number 151. The bus moved slowly towards Patterson Road and no one got off until Scotts Road. 5 passengers alighted, but several more quickly boarded the bus, with much pushing and shoving. I was startled to see that Kaleha was one of them. I moved up a step to let her in. She did not notice my presence initially, but after being pushed around till her body touched mine, she became aware of me. "Hey, Ilham," she said softly. We exchanged smiles and I caught sight of her cleavage. She had a mole on the left side of her bosom. A weird sensation ran through my body and I took a long, deep breath. I said that Kak Leha wanted to move away from me, but there was no space. She continued to lean against me. My chest felt like it was going to explode. Oh my God! Kak Leha was fully clothed, but her body felt warm and soft. My heart pounded, my breath became labored. I wanted to hug her, but I didn't have the courage. So the two of us seemed to reach a secret understanding and enjoyed ourselves in our closeness. "Just come home from school?" Kak Leha asked. Nodding in reply, I tried to control my labored breath. "Be calm. Be like Steve Margaret in Hawaii 5-0. But a tramp, calm, cool, and collected. That's like Steve Margaret's favorite line, yeah. But a tremor ran through my body. Kak Leha seemed to have sensed the turmoil and continued to tease me silently. The experience lasted for an hour until we reached Stevens Road, where many passengers alighted. Showing me a naughty look, Kak Leha left my side. I was disappointed. I wanted that warm secret pleasure to last longer. When the bus reached Whitney Road, I got off, followed by Kak Leha. The bus stop was deserted. Looking up, I saw a bright full moon. We walked in silence and I kept my urges under control. Our village was about 200 meters away and we had to walk along a track that cut through the Chinese cemetery. "Has Abang Mat found a job yet, Kak?" I stammered, breaking the silence. "Not yet," she replied. Sadness filled her voice and wiped the smile off her face. "Does Abang Mat no longer fetch you from work?" I blurted, instantly regretting my question. "The price of petrol has gone up. Abang Mat is not working, so there's no money for petrol. Anyway, it's cheaper to take the bus," she explained. "Oh," she smiled, her arms brushed against mine. "No wonder Abang Ahmad is so angry these days," I said absent-mindedly. "You hear him rant?" Kak Leha asked, looking a little startled and embarrassed. I nodded, and looking into her eyes, I continued. "I feel sorry for you, Kak. Abang Mat scolds you for no reason." She smiled, her lips luscious and inviting. "Do you always come home from school this late?" she asked. We were in a quiet, secluded area now. "No, not always. I had a scout meeting today." "You look good in that uniform," she said. My heart beat stronger as I recalled the warmth of her body on the bus. Looking at her bosom, I wanted to pounce on her. I imagined Spider Kang devouring the boo, the male spider devouring, yeah. To my surprise, Kak Leha held my hand. Though my immediate impulse was to withdraw it, I let her lead the way. My legs felt wobbly, my urges were overwhelming, and my breath became labored. Kak Leha's hand moved knowingly. Kiss me," she said. That night I became a man. The next morning I awoke in a wet and sticky sarong. So it was just a dream. But the cemetery was the place, where it happened. But yeah, so Kak Leha was interesting.
You what? 01 or 02?
2102. Yeah. You were in 2101.
01.
My scout master was Madan Prasad. Anyway. Yeah, being a scout is good, and the experiences in the kampong, you build tents and so on, play combat. At that time, Big Moro combat, the show. Yeah, it was like our favorite, and yeah. So we also played combat, and we made our own weapons using make our own weapons either. But the gun using a elastic kind of, and then with a trigger and use it to shoot. I also described some of those instances. It was like, I would say, Bukit Brown was like a playground entirely, and I grew up in that environment. I mean, when my two girls, asked me what was my experience like, actually one of the reasons why I wrote this book actually was for my two kids, my two girls. I mean, they do not know what life was like back then. It was like back then. I I thought of sharing my experiences with them. I started off writing short stories, then it became a novel. But of course, it was not the only thing about the Song of the Wind. And the later part of the Song of the Wind becomes a little bit more serious. It was about the political development that happened around Singapore in the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, there was an Iranian revolution that happened. There were some splinters of that. The influence that came to Singapore. A group of people were involved, and somehow I got involved also. It was interesting. If you need, it's not part of Bukit Brown story, but but it's something that you can find about in the book if you are interested in reading it later.
Do you have any more episodes to read? Otherwise, I can open.
Yeah, I think we open a thing. Then maybe if there's further things I can sort of read. But there's a lot of interesting things, like I mean, you making go-karts from crates, bottle crates, and then also racing down the hill, even scooters, motorcycles. So
Which year did you leave the Kampong?
I left the Kampong when I was 18. It was in 1978.
Okay, because the cemetery was decommissioned in 73.
73.
Did you realize that there was a
There wasn't. I mean, the only thing about decommissioning that happened that I knew about is about this exhuming of the graves and so on. But
that's for PIE, right?
Yes, for PIE. Yeah, that's for PIE.
Would that be Bukit Brown proper or more Bukiswa?
I do not know.
That area is described as Whitley Road area.
His description of Bukit Brown seems to be quite large.
Yeah.
The cognition of the area was quite large, right? Stretches
When
all the way
I
from.
asked my father which cemetery we are saying, I mean, there are two names that came about, Bukit Brown and Bukiswa. Right, so
Are there distinctions between the two, or are they seen to be blurred?
to me, to my mind, it was one and the same. Yeah, but I mean, categorically, maybe there was supposed to be a delineation between the two. But we kids travel all over the cemetery, all the way up to Lonnie Road, kind of thing. It was like a big playground, and we spent the whole day from morning to.
If you go from the direction towards Lonnie Road, there is also a stream. Do you remember a stream?
Yes, yeah, vaguely, because it was like more like we did not spend too much time around there because most of the time we were just playing around the immediate vicinity of the village itself. But
Was the area ever flooded?
no, because it was like on a higher ground. Yeah, but there was a fire that happened in the village once, not to the group of houses that I was staying with, but to the big house which I described just now. It was gutted, entirely gutted. So it was terrible because I mean, even though it was dilapidated, it was a home for many families, and yeah, I mean, it was quite a sad. I described that in the book too.
One of the questions I always have is, did you remember the stone carvers and the shops with the tombstones?
Yes, I remember actually
Did you ever see them at work?
while we were looking out for bacang, fruit like a mango called bacang. There are a row of them actually up somewhere near the place where the tomb makers were living. So that's how I remember the tomb makers place. Apart from that, there's nothing. Yeah.
You wouldn't have passed by the village on the way to Whitley Road?
No, Kampong Road is actually on
the other side.
The other side, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. We even went all the way up to where the Whitley Detention Center is. We have a fencing there, right? That's also part of the thing. But whenever we see the police or the guards, we will just go away because they will always just away. But there was one instant,
something which happened in the house while myself and my father and sister were actually sitting around in the living room. There was a loud, like a gunfire. And then what happened was that there was a stray bullet that pierced through the roof of my home and actually hit the corner for Michael, on the corner of the table and make a dent on the for Michael. I do not know where that bullet came from. It's still a mystery. Father said it could be from the police academy, but it's too far away. But I mean, we still keep that bullet actually up to today. I wanted to report to the police, but I mean, it went while I was still in primary school. It was like in 1970s maybe 72. It hit a corner, left a dent. That's right. I mean, it was like, you know.
Was it the daytime?
Daytime.
Could it be hunted?
I mean, there were no wild animals there to hunt, you know, so I do not know what. I mean, it could be, that is a mystery. But thank God, it did not hit anyone. Yeah.
And you came from above?
Came above from the ceiling, I don't know.
Very strange.
Probably fell down after going up. Maybe someone fired it into the air and then it came down.
Yeah,
Could be,
it's a
could be.
celebration. I mean, did you encounter like triads or, you know, I mean, we've heard tales of all this sort of like gangsters or whatever bringing people there to be beaten up. Did you
No,
meet any of these?
but there was one neighbor from someone from a neighboring village who were actually beaten up by a group of Chinese, and he went home bleeding his head, I think, and the next day he passed away. Yeah, and we do not know what happened to him because he was like working as a security guard somewhere. We do not know where. I mean, as kids we do not know where it was. But maybe I want to tell you a story of how daring we village kids became. There was this piece of land near the village where we wanted to create a badminton court. So we cleared the land, and flattened it and so on. But to make a badminton court, you need it was basically just a sandy kind of patch of land. So what we did was actually we did the poles for the light and for the net, you know. So what we did actually was a group of us daringly went out to a construction site at night, and stole 2 long planks, you know, and we like a long. I mean, I wouldn't call it a plank. I pulled 2 long poles, and we sort of, you know, we were so daring. We were caught by the police. We ended up in trouble, but we took the trouble and, you know, brought it back to the kampong, hid it somewhere. Yeah, went back to sleep. The next day we start building the badminton court, you know, poles and so on. You know how we created the lines? We use small battens, and actually we knock the battens onto the sand itself. We cut the sand and then lay the battens and lock it onto the ground. That became the lines, you know, because if you cannot draw plane, you know, yeah, so you created that way. And then whenever the shuttlecock hits the line, it will give a loud thud. And we always call it on the bundle, you know, so you cannot cheat, you know, when you hear that thing, that means it's on the line, you know. So that sound, that thud, so that was how we created the badminton court, and it became like a arena where all the children would play jelon, play whatever, satu kaki, you know, where or even small kids riding bicycles. So and whenever there's a wedding in the village, at the field, the badminton court became the place where the tent was built. And it was built. Whenever that happened, also it was interesting. We went to look out for cut bamboo poles, and we created our own benches, you know, and even a stage using bamboo. It was like a very interesting kampung affair. Again, I describe those in the book if you want to read it. I'm slowly
plugging your book.
Yeah, and I'm also, trying to sell the book.
You mentioned Kak Leha. Actually, there's another lady who's a Peranakan married to a Punjabi.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a bibi lah. The house that I was talking about that got gutted by fire.
That was a house.
Yeah, yeah. She's an old lady. I mean,
she owns.
Yes, she owns the entire thing. Yeah.
Was the fire out of revenge?
Yes, it was like a sabotage by someone not happy with I suppose. Sorry, my mind is rambling, but
Was she living with her family or was she renting out?
She ran the entire. There were like maybe about 15 households living in the compound. Yeah, compound. The houses were arranged like in a married form.
Bibi and not Peranakan.
The bibi was Peranakan, but she got married to a Punjabi. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. At this point, are there any questions that I have missed out and which are really important to ask?
Were there a lot of Indians living there? You mentioned.
Yeah, there was one family, the Indian family. That was the only Indian family living there. Sevan was one of my friends. It was the first time also I had beer with Sevan. When he was celebrating Deepavali, he invited us. I didn't know it was beer. I just it sounds bitter. The first time tasting beer. Yeah. Anyway.
Can I ask, what's the social structure like? You mentioned the jaga, for example. I mean, were there assumed roles or were they designated roles given to people? For example, I don't know,
the
cleaner, gardening, night soil you were mentioning.
Oh, I see. I don't know. I mean, I did not look it from the point of view of social structure or anything like that. It was just like people carrying out their ordinary task. And we were naughty then. This old man carried the nice soil, and at one moment a group of kids would come close to him and actually tease him, and then he got angry, and then he put down the nice soil thing, took out the lid, took his broom, and did that, and then just and the kids,
instant weapon.
Yeah, instant weapon. But
weapons of war.
there was once where actually something pitiful happened to him. It was raining, and actually he fell while carrying the night sword, and the whole night sword, splashed by blood. And ambulance came, and the attendants, could not bear carrying him because he was not all in. It was pitiful, and yet something which is I don't know how to say, but it's these things you won't see nowadays, no? Yeah.
And medical facilities, you have to go out of the kampong?
Yes, I had to go all the way to Rakyat Clinic at Balestier Road. There was Dr. Bakar last time. Dr. Bakar. I mean, I was circumcised there. So when I was 12.
Not at the kampong.
Not at the kampong. There was no special coupon or whatever.
They didn't want to risk it.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. But yes.
We met some of the Malay girls that grew up on the other side, right, Lorong Halwa. And you mentioned that the kids are very cheeky and very naughty.
Yeah.
She was sharing with us that as children they were very cheeky. When people just put in the photos, they used to try and dig it out and try and swap photos. Do you have little anecdotes like this?
Of the graves and stuff?
Yes, yes. She said they tried to put it back, of course, but,
yes,
not always succeeded.
Yeah, but I suppose we weren't that naughty. We weren't that naughty.
You didn't change the head of the lions and all that.
Yeah,
something more active.
Yeah, but there's a lot of happening around the area. For example, I mean, some lovers who come over to the to the graveyard and to with their stuff, and we kids would go and peep.
They wouldn't know, right?
Huh?
They wouldn't know.
They wouldn't. Some of them. I mean, there's a story as well there about that. While it was in one of those instances where we were building tents, and then we sort of spent the afternoon there. And suddenly we heard a rustle somewhere, and then we went to
Investigate.
And discovered they were actually lovers, came by, but there was actually a very staunch religious teacher in the village. I took Quranic lessons from him. In one of those instances, he caught these lovers, and actually he brought them to his house, tied them up, called their parents, to sort of say, I caught your children, doing hanky-panky.
Oh, speaking of which, it means you have telephone.
Yeah, telephones.
We had to use the Taukes phone.
Where?
The provision
The
shop.
provision shop. Yeah,
So
but
4 digits at a time? 5 digits?
can't remember.
So actually, the two lovers were part of the Malay community.
Yes, but they were from a different village. They came over to our village to do their business. We get caught, so we called the parents from the other village to come over, and bring back.
So you all were actually, all the nearby villages, you all also knew each other and socialized within?
Yes, we do. I mean, there were a lot of stories also of some naughty young men from my kampong, disturbing girls in another kampong, and the girl got pregnant and the father came attacking the family. So interesting.
Actually, there were more than one kampong around
Yes,
there.
yes, there were at least three Malay kampongs.
Do you remember the names? Are there specific names for these kampongs?
There's one Kampong Cantik Lama,
Yes.
Is that?
right? Yeah, and then there was Kampong Nekat and Kampong Tawakal. And there's one more, I can't remember the name, but it's further up near Police Academy.
So they are distinct
Yes.
kampongs, right?
Distinct kampongs, they have their own village heads, I suppose. The kampong that I was staying, I mean, the village basically is a tauke in that sense.
So what's the one at Lorong Halwa called?
I think it's Kampong Cantik. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
And do you know the history of the name Lorong Halwa, since Halwa is an Indian name for sweets?
No, I don't. But I remember one road called Jalan Mendaki, something like that.
What is the meaning of your village?
Tawakal.
That's a good question.
Yeah, tawakal means to put your utmost trust and faith in God. And the neighboring village is called Kampong Nekat, which means the opposite. That you go all the way out to do things,
It's open.
yeah, like Desperado kind of thing.
That's where the couple is.
Yin and yang.
Yeah, so yeah.
And the mosque was where the people from the 4 villages met.
There was a small surau at Kampong Nekat, Kampong Cantik lah, but there wasn't any mosque inside my kampong area. But we had religious classes.
There's a mosque further up the road at the
Jalan Mashor.
It's still there.
Jalan Mashor. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So that's
Still
the one
there.
for Kampong Cantik.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah.
The
But-
kampong had a Malay name, although the person who owned the place
Yeah.
houses there was Chinese.
Yeah.
How did it come about?
Not too sure actually. I mean, when I came there, people say it was Kampong Tawakal, so I didn't really know.
Do you know when you moved in at that time, how long the village had?
No
Kampong had
idea.
been?
Honestly, I don't know.
Where exactly was Kampong Tawakal? I still can't remember.
It is the kampong nearer to the PIE. That's where it was.
So it's near Mount Pleasant Road there, is it?
Mount Pleasant Road is on the lower part. It's actually on the higher part, yeah, near PIE. Yeah.
Is there any remnants of the kampong?
I don't dare to go in and find out because it's now totally
Totally overgrown.
overgrown and you don't know snakes or whatever. Yeah.
It's our playground.
Oh yeah, okay. Now it's your playground. Okay.
So when was it finally gone?
When I left in 1978, 79, I think a few years after that, Yeah, yes.
Just
Yeah,
completely resettled.
That's right.
So you didn't make any attempts to go back? Because on the other side of Lorong Halwa, some of them still go back.
I suppose
But there's nothing left.
Nothing left, yeah. I mean, those people who came back actually are those who might have their own like plantations, small plantations.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason.
Yeah. And I know, for example, my uncle who lived on the opposite side of, I can't remember the name of the kampong, the PIE, he used to actually plant tapioca, you know, somewhere near the graves.
You mentioned kapok just now.
Kapok.
Yeah, was it deliberately planted there to have kapok there?
I didn't know whether it was deliberate or not, but there were 3 trees, and you know the kabu-kabu thing used for making the pillow stuffing, right?
Yes.
So, I remember catching spiders and also catching grasshoppers and fried grasshoppers to eat, you know, and digging up tapioca and then even roasting tapioca. So it was getting jambus and plucking salam trees, stealing bananas, stealing chickens. There was this story once where actually we, me, Sevan and so went to steal chicken, which we thought was actually from a neighboring village. So we did the usual stuff. You know, I went back home, get a knife, prepare some plata, and you know, Sevan prepared the so-called bonfire and so on.
We roasted plata.
Yeah, we just margarine. Yeah,
substitute for oil.
Correct. And you know, it was like, and you know, according to Muslim rights, you got to actually say a prayer before you slaughter. We did not know what to say, you know. I just say Bismillah. I just did that, and just slaughter, and then we ate the thing. It was we sort of relished the thing. When you steal something, it's always good. So we went home that day, feeling very satisfied, and then we heard a shout from one of our neighbors saying that actually they had got their chicken. So actually it was not Chinese village chicken at the store, but the neighbor's chicken. And what was worse was that the father of the boy who shouted was saying, "Never mind, that chicken is sick." So you know, after hearing that, you know what happened. I didn't feel good. I vomited. So yeah, so that was really
partly psychological.
Partly, but yeah. So yeah.
Can I just ask one question about the material stuff? So for example, were there a lot of people with bicycles? Did they cycle?
Yes. My father had one bicycle. My barber also had one. He goes to work riding a bicycle. Abang Mat rode on motorcycle to work. Nobody had a car. At least where we're staying. But cars do come in, bringing in stuff once in a while. There's always a sarbat uncle who came by and sell bread and curry puff, you know. So yeah, ice cream sellers also come into the village and sell ice cream. My mother, you know, to earn extra money, made ice lollipops for the village children, the various flavors, you know. You got, I mean,
ice lollipop meaning there's a fridge.
Yes, and we became
electricity.
Yes, there was electricity, there was fridge. Yeah. And we we finally got a TV also.
When you moved out, you were quite old already.
I was I was 18, 19 years old, that's right.
And then you went, I assume, to an HDB?
Yes, we moved to Ang Mo Kio, Avenue 4. My father is still staying there.
Oh. Can you describe how you felt the transition? Because for so many years you were in a couple.
It felt excited because father was the first one from the village who moved out. He was someone who actually saved a lot. I mean, he saved his, and so he was able to pay for the HDB, but he paid cash. It cost him about $17,000 then, a 3-room flat. Yeah, so that was his forte. He saved money.
Was there an aspirations from the Kampong people to want to move?
Yeah, I mean, you can also read that from my book, just to sort of, find out more. But the whole idea is that I felt so excited, but at the same time sad, because I'm going to leave behind my old friends. Sevan committed suicide after that, after I moved out, when we meet again, with some friends. And there used to be a food center in front of Police Academy then, under the bridge.
Under the
flyover. I always go there for ice kacang, kind of thing, and eat mee goreng, whatever. We walk few kilometers from the village out to socialize with the kids. From other villages who gathered there, so it was like I remember the tragedy of the collapse of the viaduct, which actually killed the sambal stall owner, some other people. So yeah.
Can I just ask one last question? You're now working with LTA, right? I mean, when you share this with your colleagues at LTA, I mean, the irony of the highway being built.
Yeah.
Does this come up a lot?
I hadn't the opportunity to share my experiences with them. This is the first time I do it in public, apart from writing for it. So the ones actually dealing with this actually is not within my division, so I don't really feel, I leave it to them to rationalize whatever. I mean, yeah, but of course, as someone who used to live there, there are fond memories that but I'm not. I don't go deeply as some of you do, pertaining to doing research about the various tombstones, and I'm sure there's a lot of history there. As a writer, I feel the sadness that you feel, but it's beyond me to go further than that. Apart from maybe just recording some of the memories.
I've just checked with Tan Fong. We can have the place extended, so if you... What time do you think?
I'm free today, I'm okay.
You mentioned that you wrote this for your daughters.
Yes.
What was their reaction?
They have not read it.
Did they read it because the Malay version had come out?
I wrote the Malay version, published it in 2006. They were not, strangely, English and Malay has become a second language for them. It's no longer a mother tongue. So, my two daughters have problems with Malay, so they did not read the Malay version. So I told them the English version is out, so please read it, Then my youngest daughter, who's now in Secretary, will say, okay, I might read it for social studies or something. So, yeah. But my eldest daughter is in the film industry. I think she will really want to. They are now at the age where they are trying to get out of the shadow of the father. Because whenever they are in school, they become victims of my shadow. So it is. Yeah. So I let that be. I'll see whether there's any more interesting thing for me to read, yeah?
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you were in school, did your classmates find it strange that you lived in a cemetery and not home at a cemetery?
When I was in RI, there was instance whereby some of my friends came over for Hari Raya to visit. Honestly, at that moment, I felt kind of low because I live in that kind of situation where some of my friends come in the Mercedes van and so on too. But I invited them, but they were actually those who came by find it quite interesting in the sense that when I took them around, there was a lot of how would I say it? It is something which is, I suppose, quite unique. Not everybody lives in the midst of a cemetery kind of environment. So there was, I mean, no immediate feedback or anything like that then, but I can only maybe wonder what could have been their feelings when they saw the way I lived then.
Hari Raya, was it celebrated with the 12?
Oh yes,
families,
there's one thing which I need. I also tell, you know, we never, I myself did not eat chicken, fried chicken or whatever, you know, chicken meal basically.
Before the churi ayam.
Yeah, that's why it's called.
You were a scout too.
Yeah, I was a scout too, so scout churi ayam. Yeah, that's really not.
No, we always say scout churi ayam.
But anyway, just during Ramadan, 7 days before Ramadan, we would make these small pelita, what do you call it, lights? Yeah. From tin cans, we just put in oil and then then we actually put it around the village, and then either on a bamboo stick, whatever, right? And then we lighted the whole village 7 days before Hari Raya, and we also make cannons from big bamboo shoots and the trunks, using carbide, and then we sort of just go up far away from somewhere in the cemetery, just fire the cannons. It was interesting, but somebody got that also because that thing burst and then exploded and injured the person. But those are the things that happened prior to Hari Raya. And the night before Hari Raya, everybody, I mean, there's like a kind of corridor in front of each household. You would lay mats on that, wash it first, and after that lay mats, and everybody bringing food, and we sort of celebrated the eve of Hari Raya together. And that is the only time when we eat chicken. Before that, chicken was expensive or had to be stolen.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
You mentioned you have electricity, and for telephone you use the Tauke's phone. What about water? Do you get it from a standpipe, or do you have wells?
Yeah, there's a tap. Of course, we had a bathhouse and
So did PUB charge you water bills and all that?
We actually pay a fixed amount to the Tauke every month. So
the Tauke got the bill.
Yeah, Tauke got the bill.
When people pass away in the kampong, where were they buried?
I do not know actually, but not there. But I think they were brought to Bidadari at the time. Bidadari Cemetery. Yeah. Strangely, nobody died when I was there.
It's the air there, right?
Yes, there is someone that died. The one that
got beaten
died
up.
and then the next
Oh
day
yeah,
died.
that's the one. Yeah.
And also the lady.
Yeah.
Did she die?
Which one? Which lady?
When the house burned down, did anybody
No,
die?
nobody died during
Just
that.
burned.
Only that guy that got.
Yes, but that was a neighboring village, not in my village.
Did you ever cross over Melny Road to the other side?
Melny Road? No, we didn't.
Somehow you didn't go up towards the Melny Road side.
Not as often as I would around the other areas. Yeah.
The orientation is always towards Woodley and Bukit Brown.
Yeah.
Will your village be near to St. Joseph, the present St. Joseph? Because across the road is the
St. Joseph, that's Malcolm Road, right? It goes up the hill. Then there's a area where there's a cemetery. There's one village there. That's not my village. There's just across the PIE now. It used to be Whitley Road then. That's where my village was. So it's
Is it near the colonial houses? Near the black and white houses?
Colonial houses is up on the hill at Jalan Mendaki area. Yeah, and next to it actually is Kampong Cantik Lama. Was it Kampong Cantik Lama? Maybe I get confused. But my village was nearer to the PIE side. Yeah, it's in between the police academy. Yeah, you go maybe about 200-300 meters away from the, or maybe more, about a kilometer away, and that's where the village was.
Oh, that is the place whereby they always park illegally now.
Park illegally now?
For Qingming purposes.
Is it? No?
Currently, even during Qingming now, there are people who park illegally. They'll go up to the slope.
They're slowly tempting you for a revisit.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. A lot of undergrowth there. Quite scary to play.
So how many Kampong folks were directly involved with working at Bukit Brown? There was one person, right, who was taking charge of
That was the only person I know who became like a caretaker. He actually took charge of about three graves, and those are big ones, not the smaller ones. Yeah, and these graves are actually fenced. Each one has got a fence. He's Malay. He's Malay and he's hunchback. He's Abang Mas' father actually. Yeah.
So he's Abang Mas.
Sorry?
Who is Abang Mas?
Abang Mat is the husband of Kalia.
Only concentrate on.
Yes, didn't hear the man's name.
Yeah, I didn't hear
So did the children take over his job after that?
No, none of his children did.
So they just...
Yeah, after that, I'm not too sure where they are now. I'm not sure they're still alive.
When
Sorry?
About caretakers from the other villages, the other three villages. There were some, or did they work? Because we hear stories of them.
I'm sure they
even
are
working with the island club across.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are caretakers who took care of graves, especially for those beach town caves.
From the sound of it, only one person out of the 12 houses.
Yes, from the 12 household, yes, only one person was child of them.
So have you been up to the big grave? You call it on Sambiao?
No,
It's quite far away from where
That's far away from your village?
Yeah, very far.
Where is it? Look at somewhere near Lonnie's side.
It's
in Bukit Brown.
It's in Bukit Brown.
Nearer to Lonnie's
It's on
side.
top of a hill. And maybe at your time you might have some koi swimming there. Because there's a moat.
There's a moat.
There's a moat there.
Wow.
So you mentioned earlier on there was a grave that your neighbour was looking after that had a pond in front.
Yes, there's a
I wonder whether it's that one or not. Or were there other graves with ponds in front?
That was the only one.
It's very,
That was the
very
only
far
one.
from where you are.
There was only one next to where I was staying. Yeah.
Next to where you
Yeah.
were
Near you, it cannot be on
So there's another one near where he stays with
Yeah,
the big
no?
one with a pond.
No, I don't think so. But I remember that it was embellished with glass mosaic. That I remember. So it was very special.
Let's go and look for it.
I do not know because
Yeah, 30 years ago.
maybe one day we should all go
Maybe
there.
the PIE name.
Maybe one day you can
Those fences, are they locked up?
I've been to parts of that.
There's like a
People
gate
still go
with a
inside.
lock, yeah, and then the fence gets closed.
So you can't, most people who have no business cannot really get in.
But we children just climb over the fence, yeah, and we just rest there, whatever.
Actually, there are a few graves, even in Bukit Brown.
There are fences.
Oh.
Yes.
We just
I
climb.
also there.
I remember walking all the way.
that we went.
I remember walking all the way up to Roddy
There was
roadside,
two
but it was
fences
like
on
more like adventure, try to
In
find out.
fact, you know
There was no
Do you remember
the
any
fence
Chinese
grave there, the
temple?
horse face bulldoze it, build the horse.
Chinese temple. Yes,
It's near the Chinese temple.
Yes, I think so. I remembered wayangs, attending wayangs, Chinese wayangs.
That's from where he
Yeah, I don't know what occasion it was, but we went down to actually watch Chinese wayang near the Mount Pleasant area, somewhere there. It was fun also watching.
Were there hawkers there?
Yes, definitely. I mean, selling bakwa and whatever. Yeah.
Do you remember like a car workshop? Is there a car workshop or yes?
King Hawk Road,
Possibly,
right?
possibly.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what we
few cars, but I thought there was something now that area.
Mount Pleasant side, I think. Yeah, Mount Pleasant side. Yeah. But there was this drain that actually, municipal drain from my village that goes all the way up to the Kampong Chantik side, connected somehow. So that's how we also sort of, travel from one village to another.
Just follow the drain.
Follow the drain. Follow the drain.
We catch guppies.
Catch guppies, and we make boats, what we call, and then we just raise the boats, when there's really downpour.
Paper boat.
No, not paper boat. We actually carve wood, and then just raise the boats. That's how we did. We just chase it. Just hop onto the sides of the drain. Just interesting kind of. We always put a bet on it. Whoever wins a Coca-Cola or something.
When it rained really hard, was it difficult to get out?
What I remember, when it rained heavily, we used to swim in the drains, especially those drains which has got a steep embankment. When the water flows up, we use it like a swimming pool and swim. And sometimes we even purposely barricade it with plywood or whatever, just create that swimming pool atmosphere. So that was how it was played. But I remember also a place where we used to, my mother used to bring me there to bathe. It was like a small waterfall. It was actually from the hills of the great itself, but
it's a concreted area.
Some villagers go there to wash clothes. There's a bamboo clump on top of it.
Is it near the police academy site, near the
it is actually near there, but it's not in my village. It's another village, but I used to go there also.
I think it's still there, Still
there.
Near, there's the banana plum nearby also, right?
I remember vividly there's some bamboo clumps, and it was like a drain, and there's water fall.
It's still there. The people are still using the water there to wash.
Right. Yeah, maybe I should go back.
You have to bring him. She'll bring you to the spots where your memory will be
I don't dare actually to go back. It's kind of overgrown there.
You go with you
not bad lah.
Not so bad.
It's really locally manageable.
We go with you.
Yeah, scouts should not be afraid.
Okay, I think maybe we should have a few more questions before we call it a day. Also because I think we are overstaying the traffic. Yes?
Okay, beside this, beside Homemaker, Homemaker community is over there. Is that because we saw some abandoned cars there?
Cars?
Yeah, is there any workshop
That's the same question.
I just asked that question.
Possibly there is, I'm not sure, but it is actually more the Kampong Chantik area, not where I was staying. Yeah.
And those durian trees?
Yeah, a lot of durian trees, definitely. Rambutan, durians, rambais, bananas.
Maybe the durian was from one of the seeds that you all threw.
Could be.
So a few years ago, you did this tour. I think that was when Wawa was public.
Correct.
I found it very enjoyable. So
maybe you should be doing a similar tour. Yeah, why not? But I think we must come with a sickle, with some
and a bag of stones, and 2 cans of paint.
Two cans of paint. Yes, then maybe during Cheng. Maybe during Cheng. I can't remember.
I think Cheng have a lot of people.
A lot of people.
There will be a lot of people.
People that go there.
Now Chengling is packed. Because got cars. Now people drive through.
Drive in?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. No, the provision shop where we patronize actually is at the edge of Whitley Road. It is actually, and there was after it goes downhill to, and then there is the place where actually we raise our handmade go-karts and motorbikes. Very interesting experience.
Did all these experiences have anything to do with your decision to become
what I know is that I think it's a tactile kind of thing. I mean,
Would you recommend it to?
I think my sensitivity as a writer was probably due to me staying there and experiencing such a thing. Maybe touch, smell, things. It sort of heighten your sensitivity. So yeah, that is something which I cherish forever.
Any other questions?
Did you enjoy going to school and studying and writing and reading at school?
I started writing when I was in primary school. My Malay teacher used to say that my writing was like a secondary school student writing. So, and sort of entered some competitions here and there. But I did not seriously begin to write until in late teens, so to speak. My first poem was published in the papers when I was 19 years old. But something happened to me in 1979, which actually changed my perspective of life, where I took a turn of looking at things seriously. That is it, my book, if you want to find out also. But
is it related to Bukit Brown?
It is not related to Bukit Brown, but Bukit Brown was like a cultural ballast for me that helps me to sustain my strength. Because it was through the friendship that I had with Sevan, with Zul, village folks, that kept me.
So it was that incident.
Yeah, that incident sort of was
Suicide?
No, Sevan suicide is one, but my own experiences that happened when I was 19 years old that shook me. But I think it was through my experiences and my good friendship with sort of helped me grow as a person and strengthen my belief in myself and so on. So yeah.
Maybe if you have other questions, we can
take it offline.
Yeah. But at this point in time, can you join me again in thanking?
Thank you.
Present you with
thank you to actually I give you something also. Okay, I'll leave that.
This is Spaces of the Dead.
So it's Spaces of the Dead, and thank you for making a space for the dead much more alive.
Yes, thank you for having me.
We also need to congratulate Nanfong because he just became a father again.
Okay.
So on that note, go and buy Isa's book. I think that's very important. So please support.
So maybe if you want to sell it at Bukit Brown. Tell them it's wanted Bukit Brown.
We can do a tour after that. Yeah, we wanted to do a tour for you. Because that will help you to publicize the book too.
We have to do it after the Writers' Festival though. I had some commitment with the Writers' Festival. Publicly, I should not be launching anything.
But the book is available.
Available, yes.
Yeah, buy a book, get an autograph, buy some drinks, pick up more books. Stay around as long as you want.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.